But now I'll rise above you.
How would you integrate these changes in a direction that really makes an end game progression with meaningful rewards? Right. So for capture mission, I don't think that you need to have an end game for capture missions. That in and of itself sounds a little bit silly. However, since DE is so hot on rotating certain game modes and buffs and shit like arbitration and all that junk, right? Since they're so hot for doing that, you could have a, let's say, I don't know what to call it, elite Tenno mercenary board or award board or bounty board or whatever the fuck that could be Devil May Cry 5 when. I don't know. I hope sometime. So in other words, I'm thinking a little bit about Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2, even after you've beaten the entire game and you're now super OP in the game and you've beaten all the content, you can still go to different regions of the map and find bounty boards. Outriders even has it, right? And these bounty boards will provide you with certain enemies, certain targets, certain bosses that you can go out and try to kill. And if you kill them, you bring back the bounty for your reward. Okay? Would fit into the Tenno space. Based off of what we are and what we do. Would also tie into the morality thing a little bit. If you would want to integrate that as well, you could do that later too. So retrofit it. And so this bounty board would have different kinds of bounties. It could be a capture today. It could be a exterminate tomorrow. It could be a lich kill one day. It could be whatever. You know, it can rotate, be different things. So how would you make that end game, and how would you make it reward something juicy? Okay. Rewards in general, I'll give to you in just a sec, because we've spoken about how you can make things rewarding in Warframe in general, because it seems like DE doesn't understand what players would find rewarding, and it is a bit of a tricky question. But how to make it end game? Well, what is end game? End game is, I think, if you boil it down, end game is some kind of space within the game where you put your skill, your maximum skill, to the test and really stress test the player, right? Where you have to use and harness everything that you've learned and built and upgraded up until that point. You have to use that to borderline perfection to actually defeat this new task, okay? So now let's say you've beaten the game, you've played the Earth capture missions, you've played the Ceres capture missions that got more difficult and more difficult and more difficult, but generally none of them are difficult anymore for you. You kind of know how to do them all in both styles. And now you look at this bounty board and you see a capture mission for a super high priority mega colonel something, Grenier or whatever, heavily fortified in their own ship and whatever. Okay. Like with any endgame, you could structure it something like a raid. So it would have different stages that would test different different aspects of your abilities as a Warframe with abilities and with shooting and weaponry and builds, but also as a player with your intellect and your intuition and your reaction speed, yada yada yada. Something like that. So getting to that target alone would already be like a challenge, you know? Like, I don't know, let's say incorporate Railjack as well, where you have to blast your way through a legion or disable some shit up in space and then fly down to Earth to actually be able to infiltrate the damn thing, kind of Star Wars, Death Star kind of deal, you know, with destroying the satellite or whatever, Rogue One kind of thing. Something like that. Then you get to the enemy, and then maybe instead of having an enemy that either runs or gives up and you have to shoot them in their weak point, maybe it's more like a lich type dude that'll actually, he'll be waiting for you, be ready, and he has his blade sharpened. He's ready to kick your ass, right? A little bit maybe like what are they called? The junctions here. These guys. Maybe a scenario kind of like that where you finally make it there, John Wick style. You're finally there. You're finally at the end boss that you're supposed to capture, alive no less. And he's like, I'm not running. I'm gonna fight your ass. And he's actually a little difficult to fight. How you would structure that fight, that's a different task for a different video or discussion. But think of it that way. Not that hard. And this is just the brain power from one person thinking that this is an option that might be awesome. But I'm sure that there are other options out there as well, and many ideas that would all be pretty good, you know? All right, let me catch up with chat, and then we'll talk about reward. AZ, hello. Yes, like when T4 defense was a thing, around 50 would give you a rare core cache. Yep. I also liked your idea about spawning in the dojo and not inside the orbiter. Yep. I think you explained it pretty well. Only thing I'm not sure on is how much work it would take to overhaul the game in such a way. True. That's not our job as players to figure out, though. That's DE's job. And they can do it. They do have the skill and the know-how, and we know that the technology exists as well because dozens of other games do these things too without any problems. But yeah, in such a way, think you might be downplaying that just a little bit. Also, shock from sudden changes like that might shock some members of the community, which I'm sure DE doesn't want. However, I'm sure there's a middle ground somewhere. Maybe higher level planets start introducing some of these mechanics or something. If I understand correctly, you think, or not think, but you're implying that the shock would be exclusively negative. And I don't believe that. We know that the Warframe community hates change, and they cry about every little change, no matter if it's good or bad. They're always pissed. But I think upgrading the experience of your base missions, as for example, what I just mentioned with the capture, just as an example, I think there would be some shock, but I think it would be more of a pleasant shock, honestly, because it would straight up be better than the mundane thing we're doing now. The mundane, brain-dead, repetitive thing we're doing now. You would go from that to something that actually scales, actually has progression, actually requires skill, doesn't require skill, but allows skill play if you want to go that route, and allows for options, and allows for reward. Scaling reward, I guess you could say even, right? I don't see how anyone could see a straight up upgrade to the game experience itself at its core as bad. And even if it is a couple hundred, screw them. You know, DE doesn't need to make everybody happy all the time. It's okay to make the majorities happy. You know? I'm curious how we could improve on interception missions, even though we don't come across them often. When we do, they're so boring and uninteresting. Yeah, I have some ideas for interception missions as well. I'll get to that in a second. So somebody asked about how could we do... Oh, trash. Right. How could we do reward and stuff like that? How could we implement reward into this game? You know, when you do these kinds of capture missions, and let's say every mission where it might be possible and maybe necessary, like survival. I guess survival would be one of the missions you could touch last. Survival is pretty fine as it is for what it is, infinite killing basically. But other base missions, such as the capture mission, the extermination mission, the rescue mission, all of these could get the Jizo treatment, as per what I just said. So in a world where that is now the norm, that is now done, DE is finished doing all of that, they did it, all the missions now are actually really cool to play and have some variety. And progression. What reward are we going to be looking at? Well, rewards for Warframe is a little bit tricky, because Warframe doesn't have any endgame. But there are two general ways that you can reward players in Warframe, and there are two places, subsequently, where you can look for answers as to what might be good rewards. Number one, what do players desire the most? And number two, what do players despise the most? Okay? One of the things that players love is power. It's a horde shooter. Having power is kind of like one of the things, okay? So players like power. How could we give them power? I mean, we already have rivens. We already have arcanes. We already have this. We already have that. Okay. Just throwing ideas out there now. Let's say you're a player who has completed the entire star chart with that progression. It was pretty cool. And now you're dabbling in the steel path place, the steel path that's supposed to be, you know, the end game. So everything you've already done in the regular star chart, just now harder with other perks and handicaps and maybe even completely different enemy units partially, or surprise bosses and shit like that, you know? Or actual teams that try to hunt you, so it's always scary, like the Stalker used to be scary once upon a time, remember? Something like that. So you create an environment. Unfortunately, that environment doesn't exist in Warframe, so it's a little bit difficult, but just imagine that we would have an environment that we would all agree on is endgame, okay? We're only talking about what could the rewards possibly look like. How about an extra level on Serration? As just one possibility. Players love power, right? Okay, Serration is a mandatory mod. Everybody uses it. Cool. Make it so that I can upgrade this by 1 more level or 2 or 3 more levels or something. Don't like that idea? Fair enough. I don't either. It's just one suggestion for maybe a lower tier on the end game spectrum of rewards. Maybe something higher tier would be something that I already made a video of, is make it so that Serration could be infused into your stats. So you would no longer be using this mod slot because you don't need to put Serration on it anymore, and you couldn't put it on there again because you infused Seration's buff into the weapon stats itself. Okay? And you can't do it several times with several copies of Serations. It would be a one-time thing per weapon only. Okay? That would also give some nice reasons to have more copies of Serration, you know? Okay, so what does that give us? That gives us a full extra mod slot to do whatever we want with. You know, for example, another example of something that we may be able to use as a reward for players, since players like power, if not this idea or the previous one. How about just an extra mod slot in general, for example? Okay, none of those ideas are nice. How about we look at rivens in particular then? How about a gadget that you use in the foundry maybe or somewhere that could eliminate, or maybe better yet, save one of the stats on your selected riven. So let's say I want to re-roll this riven because I don't like 98% status duration, right? But I don't want to re-roll the riven because I really like having that plus damage. Thanks to the high tier reward, a little thing that I can, like a gadget, I can infuse it onto this riven, like almost like formaying a riven kind of, to understand what I'm talking about. And it's a regular drop. You don't need to do any other crazy shit. It just only drops in endgame. You could use that to save one of the stats, whichever one you want. In my example, let's say I'd save the damage one, and then I could re-roll the riven, and the other two would be the only ones that change. And I could save others, and I could interchange them as well, maybe once or something. You know, these kinds of ideas. You want more ideas? Okay. Let's go away from what players actually want, right? Because different players want different things for different reasons for different things. So it gets tricky very quickly, like all of the stuff that I just suggested pertaining to power and to mods. Maybe nobody would want that. Okay, let's get away from things that players want. What about things that players absolutely fucking hate and despise? How about this motherfucker over here? How about this shit? Is there any player out there that you guys know that is totally okay with building one single fucking forma every 23 hours? I don't know anybody. In my experience, the vast majority of players hate this very, very much. Okay, how about a reward, maybe another device of some sort that you can use that would allow you to build 5 formas at once for 24 hours. Or maybe an insta-finish. For example, a card that you can use that maybe, if it's an insta-finish kind of card thing, it may have to drop like candy a little bit, maybe in the lower tier of the high tier level rewards, right? But something with which you can speed this shit up. Or something with which you could bypass grind. Like, I don't like grinding for fish. I don't like doing that. Okay, how about a high level? This is also the reward that you could build in. Imagine, what's that mission called? That one railjack, not railjack, that one Archwing mission? Rush, where you chase down that ship. Fine, sure. What if something similar to that, a mission type that you can only do in endgame, or at least it only rewards this in endgame, instead of rewarding you with 500 plastids and a common mod, instead of doing that, if you succeed, and it should be fairly difficult to do this as well, on higher levels, it would be like, it would have cargo, like valuable cargo. Tenno, there's valuable cargo on that ship. Go shut it down, break those engines or whatever, and steal it. And you actually steal something valuable. Like, for example, I don't know, 500 of each type of fish, for example. Immediately, if you would take me as a player example, I cannot tell you guys, like, I don't have the vocabulary to describe how much I detest sitting in these open worlds in an action shooter game to do fishing and mining. I cannot explain and express how much I hate that, right? I would much rather do a stupid, difficult mission that I fail 6 times in a row for trying 3 hours straight, and I start sweating and everything. I'd rather do that mission and then have 500 units of every fish rather than waste my time fishing on Fortuna, Plains of Eidolon, and Deimos to get a couple of units for several days. Right? Now, for the casual players that go, my rum isn't strong enough, that's too hard, I can't do that mission. Then go fuck yourself and go fish. It'll take longer, but it's easy. Options. Okay? That would be one example. So DE could very easily find ways to reward players properly. Look at the stuff that we want and would like to have more, or look at the stuff we really, really hate about the game and we seem to be bypassing very often, right? And then come up with ideas from that. And that is how you would get the progression, and more so in this case what I'm talking about, the reward system down, the scaling reward system. You do something that is difficult, you get a juicy reward for it. You take the lazy route, you get a reward too, but less. Much less. You want more reward progression? Okay. Fisher missions. If you look at any of these fisher missions here, right? There isn't any that is endless right now. But if there was a survival or a defense here, why exactly, as a player, would I go 10 waves of defense, or 20, or 50, or 80 waves of defense? Why? Literally no benefit. How is it? Explain this to me. How is it possible that there are endless missions? Missions that you can push further than the boundaries or the minimum requirements needed to complete the mission, right? How is it that the player that stays in a fisher's survival for 5 minutes and yeets and repeats has the same reward as the asshole that stays in there for an hour? How is that fair or okay? I don't understand that. How can you fix that and give us scaling rewards and make players want to actually go for longer? Fucking easy. Operation number 1. Look at this. You have regular relics, right? Let me go into just one area. You have regular relics with a certain drop chance, okay? Here you can see the drop chances and shit, right? Very, very low drop chance on the rare thing, a little bit less rare here, and these here are super common, right? Now, if I were to go into the game and radiate these bitches, look at this, how high of a drop chance this has, and how high of a drop chance this has, and how low of a drop chance in comparison this has. How is it that I'm doing radiant relics and these fuckers up here still drop? What? What? Kiss my left butt cheek. What on earth? No. Easy fix. How about at certain intervals, like maybe the 10-minute marks? So 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30, 40, 50, 60, or maybe every 15 minutes, I don't care, whatever, 15, 30, 35, what the fuck, 45, etc. How about on my relics, right?
Operator,
the common drops start to get eliminated. So assuming I would have 100 of this particular relic, right? I take this relic into a survival and I want to go for super long. After 5 minutes, any of this here can happen. At 10 minutes, any of this here could happen. At 15 minutes, any of this here could happen, but every minute after, so 20 minutes would be the next one of these up here would be eliminated. these would just be out of the pool. At 15. At 30, another one would be out of the pool. At 45, another one would be out of the pool. And after the 45 mark, the 45-minute survival mark, the only things that could possibly drop are these rewards down here, regardless of being radiant or not, right? Of course, the drop chances would be higher if you have them radiant. You know, you could also put like a little extra layer in there, so making them radiant actually has some kind of a meaning. And after 45, you would have the next instance at 60. At the 60-minute mark, these here no longer exist, and now one of these three is going to be eliminated, but with player choice. The player can decide to say, I'll eliminate this one, or this one, or this one. Subsequently, and of course, every player would go with one of these, one of the silvers, because you want to increase the chance of this here dropping, right? And this is at the 60-minute mark. Now, let's say I would select Karis Prime, and I would say no more Karis Primes can drop from this relic. Then after 60, let's say 65, 70, 75, etc., I only have a drop chance for these here and maybe some other regular stuff like 10,000 credits or whatever, just in case I get, let's say I get Death Cube several times or whatever. You know what I mean? It's not rocket science. And these kind of ideas are already out there. Players have been very vocal about these things for a very, very long time. The information is out there. If DE doesn't know where to start looking, the first place that they can go is start asking the content creators who've been dealing with this shit for years, like such as myself or others. There are others. It doesn't have to be me. I'm just saying there are many. Best thing that DE could do is actually reach out to the content creators that are the most troublesome, such as Trib, Ashisogi Tenno, Ray Talius, Raper Hunter, whoever else, right? The ones that are most troublesome, and say, hey guys, we're looking for how to reward the player. We're looking into that. What are your experiences with the community? What do the people seem to want according to you guys? Not, hey Trib, tell me how to make reward. No, just, yo Trib, Ashisogi, Ray. Here, come sit down, have a seat. We're looking into reward systems, but before we dive in too deep, we would like to get a firm grasp conceptually on what the community is kind of in for. You guys have large audiences. You guys are known for kicking us in the ass for many, many years. You guys probably have some opinions. What does your community say? Easy. This really isn't hard to think about. Exactly.
More cannon fodder.
Exactly. All DE needs to do is hear out, not listen to. Listen to implies obey. That's not what we mean, obviously. But just hear the player base out. I'm a player. I've been playing this fucking game for 6,000 hours now, almost. And about 6 or 7 years, right? I've been watching DE for 6 or 7 years, right? I kind of know them now as a company and as a developing thing. And I kind of understand the community as well because I've always been invested with the community. Do you know how many hours? There was a full year where I mained region chat. I'm not even kidding. My day with Warframe was log in, go into region chat, and chat with these people here and answer stupid questions. That's what I did for a full year daily. Okay? So, my Discord server, for example, go look up how many messages I have in there. There are over 100,000. I'm active, you know? I'm around. I see what the community is saying. I read all of my goddamn comments on every YouTube video. Those are thousands of comments, right? I read all of them. I kind of understand what the community really, really longs for, what the community really, really hates, and I can kind of intuitively feel out what would benefit the game and what really wouldn't, which is why I can tell you that the galvanized mods are fucking stupid. Luckily, that's one of the more obvious things where people can agree with me. 3 months ago, when they first talked about buffing guns and all that, I said, DE's probably going to screw us. The reaction of the community was, why are you always being cynical? Why are you always so negative? Shut the fuck up, Jizo. And here we are 3 months later, and they're all running away with their tail tucked between their legs. Like, oh shit, Jizo was right. Again. DE has stated previously, I think it was openly said in the TennoCon 2017 or 2018 video, that Warframe is a passion project. Yeah, I remember something like that. It's really not surprising that they keep pushing their vision of the game, regardless of the reality of what they're actually creating, or have created, or what the community requests. Fan service is typically restricted to aesthetics. Yes, I believe that DE views their game as a passion project, but they would have to be insane to force viewing it only as a passion project, because the passion project also puts food on all of their tables. I don't know about you guys, but last time I checked, every single developer that works at Digital Extremes gets a salary from Digital Extremes. So if Digital Extremes fucks up their game, you know, the only successful game that they have ever had and ever made, the only thing that is feeding them, if they fuck that up, every one of them, every 3 or however many hundred they have right now, are unemployed. So sitting there and saying, "This is my passion project. I'd rather starve. I'd rather go unemployed. I'd rather go bankrupt than actually do, you know, something that might not be in line with your stupid passion, but rather in line with what the vast majority of the player base needs and wants to have," might be a small price to pay for salvation. You know what I mean?